Everyone, I want to wrap up in a nice bow the Facebook conversation that I really deliberately started because I was testing a hypothesis and it seemed I was correct. My hypothesis was that the main problem with the issue of East 12th and the application of the State Surplus Land Act was one of perception. That is, in the case of a black developer building a high rise, that I thought was kind of out of scale for Lake Merritt, to be frank, and I actually vlogged about that about a year or two ago, but that's another point. It seemed that person was put under a level of scrutiny not applied to his white counterparts, or I should say that group's white counterparts. In this case, Signature Development and the Brooklyn Basin. All of this has to do with how a person chooses, it's their worldview. That is, someone who's black and in business in Oakland has to be doing something nefarious. They have to be less than, okay? And the people that impart that point of view generally tend to be white. And this has been historic. And it's reflected in the media, so much so that it has become standard. But we're at a point now where race relations are either very good or very bad. And we have people who have the racist issues who sit cheek by jowl with people who don't, both they're white or black or many other colors. We had a point where Bernie Sanders gets heckled by Black Lives Matter group members, and he responds in a way that could cost him a lot of the support that he gained because it was classically patrician and white. Okay? So with all that, I went to work. And I basically got what I wanted. In the case of the language regarding the State Land Surplus Act, it says in black and white that it applies to agencies that are empowered to hold real property. The language does not discriminate regarding the agency. It doesn't say except ports. So a reading of the law, a blank one, would say, okay, it applies to ports. But here's another point. The Land Act itself was never even brought to bear on the issue of Brooklyn Basin, even to say, hey, that's wrong, because not only that, we're talking about land that was purchased, that was owned in part by the state of California and in part by the Port of Oakland. So even then, it's not just a port issue. And we go back to the language and what it says regarding it being applied to public agencies that are empowered in the state of California to hold real property. So when I put that out there, Douglas Saunders, for reasons that at first were really weird to me, started basically checking on the land itself, the act itself, to see if I was even right in addressing the port issue when I had already looked at it, and spent what I believe was an inordinate amount of time on that. In other words, he was trying to prove that I was wrong. And I thought, why is that? And I thought maybe was he involved in the Brooklyn Basin deal? No. He just didn't want to admit that a black guy was right. Because when you try, and the reason why I'm going through this process is because someone black, around black folks, will look at this and say, that white guy just doesn't want to admit that a black guy is right. That's how we talk to each other, except me. I talk the same way to everybody regardless of who they are. Some people can't stand it. But I don't have two languages. I don't talk a certain way around black folks and say, oh yeah, I know, and then a different way around white folks. I am what you get. And so what I'm trying to explain to Douglas Saunders is, and others who are involved either as observers or participants in this issue and others in Oakland, is you have to be smarter and more savvy and more racially sensitive about how you present what you say and look at it, and then be aware of your own motivations. So when Saunders said, well, you're not an attorney, and I said, well, you turned around, okay, I'm not an attorney, but then My godfather, Bob Schock, says, hey, I'm a better attorney than a lot of people in Oakland, including folks like Douglas Saunders. Okay? Now, and I know how to shepherdize cases and everything else. In fact, John Russo and Roger Hughes actually were lobbying for me to go to law school. And we were working out the financial details and everything. Didn't quite do it because they said, hey, look, you're already an attorney. You just need the paper. So yeah, Douglas Saunders, I'm a great attorney, even though if I don't have the paperwork, and I'm much better than you. Now, back to my main point. There are some people who can't stand a black guy who is aggressively intelligent, who presents his intellect in the same way that someone else, African American, might present how strong they are or how athletic they are, which is what we're used to culturally, right? And I know that, and so I press that because I know some people are bothered by it, and my point is you shouldn't be. If I state something, I show it to you in black and white, accept it. But Douglas Saunders had a problem with that. So rather than admit, hey, you know what, checkmate, Zenny, you got me, he then resorts to calling me a name, Putz, which to me began to sound like, hey, N-word, right? I've been in this business a long time. I've been called all kinds of things. I don't care. I love it. I absolutely love it. So I thought, well, let me try this little test. And I'll throw that one out there, which is, hey, all the platforms that I own online are worth, in combination, $6 million. Now, to anyone that really understands media today, that's not a lot of money. But the Douglas Saunders is like, oh my God, he can't be possibly saying that. Oh, he's a didactic and it proves, he was going off on all this stuff. I loved it. I loved it. There are people in Oakland who are older and white, some of them, who can't stand that someone black, like me, would build this and have a point of view that isn't classically what they want. As opposed to saying, hey, you know what? He did that and that's great. You know what? Which was what Douglas could have said, right? He didn't say that. He didn't say that. So that's why I did it. I was trying to basically set up an example of the race problem we have right here in Oakland and in the United States today among people who would say, I'm not racist. Yeah, because other people would say, you are being racist. You know? That's the whole point. If you want not to be thought of that way, you've got to hear the other person and let them talk and not call them names when you realize, hey, you know what? That person's right. I'm right. So what? But the bigger issue beyond my being right is that we do have a media problem here. We have some reporters that work for other publications that take, for example, one particular issue of an organization not being qualified, and rather than it being a story of a black business being undercapitalized and problems of the undercapitalization of black businesses, it becomes a story of civic incompetence or back dealing. If that's the case, and I pointed to Phil Tagami as an example, Phil got upset with me. Phil, I love you. You know I lobbied for you to get that, but you also know what I'm talking about, okay? There are a lot of us, myself, Elihu, who moved heaven and earth for you to get that Rotunda contract, and it was worth $32 million. And yeah, you came in with your capital, but you also were considered not experienced. The point that I'm trying to make is that you were not undercapitalized. This group was. Rachel Swan could have used that, comparison and done a more constructive article rather than what seemed like some sort of hit piece against black politics. Just saying. And it's not the first time that's happened this year. It's an undercurrent that happens at the wrong time. When you have Sandra Brandt allegedly committed suicide in jail, but others say the law enforcement, the police officers killed her in jail in Texas, black woman. We have a litany of young black males being murdered by law enforcement, which is regarded as the symbol of, by some who are black, of white power culture. We will keep you in line. We will make you subordinate to us. And so Douglas Saunders, when you come up to me like that, it's like you're saying, I'm going to keep you in line, make you subordinate to me. I'm going to judge you. And I turned it back on you. I said, no, I'm judging you. There's a huge issue here. You can either ignore it, and it's going to bite you, or deal with it head on and help improve society. Those are the choices you have.